7 years ago, during my sophomore year in college, I had an experience that would stick with me for a long time. It was my first encounter with a drug other than marijuana. Looking back, I realize how reckless and uninformed I was at the time. There were many foolish decisions made during this experience, including my lack of adequate research about the drug and how much I should actually take. 7 years later, I have learned a lot about drug safety and responsibility. But at that moment in time, I was completely naive. This particular incident has shaped my current cautious approach to any substance I consider using. I now prioritize thorough research before trying something new. My introduction to salvia occurred about a year before this pivotal experience. A friend from my dorm, who lived just down the hall, had mentioned it to me. He described salvia as a legal psychedelic that was popular and fun, almost like marijuana. I found it amusing that it was legal in Oregon and could be found almost everywhere in smoke shops. At the time, I figured this was a great alternative to weed, so I was curious to try it out. However, looking back, I can understand how misguided that thought was. I experimented with it a few times at parties, usually in a group setting. I never really felt any significant effects apart from mild dizziness and a little unsteadiness, likely because we didn't know how to smoke it properly. We used poorly made small pipes and didn't hold our hits long enough. Additionally, we didn't really know what kind of sensations we should be expecting. Fast forward to a year later, I found myself in a local smoke shop in my town, excited to buy my first proper glass bong. I was out of weed, so I decided to grab a gram of 20x salvia, unaware of what 20x actually meant. My understanding at that moment was limited and naive. I still thought salvia would offer a similar experience to marijuana, just with a bit more dizziness and laughter. In the week that followed, I tried the salvia several times but again encountered no notable effects, just the same slight spinning I had experienced before. This lack of significant impact led me to believe that consuming it was still some kind of fun. Eventually, I found myself nearing the end of the salvia pack, with just enough for one final, big bowl left. I planned to try it one last time, thinking the next day would be the perfect opportunity. I made sure to get a good night's sleep so that I would be ready for the experience. On that fateful day, I woke up early and joined my friends, whom I'll refer to as S, T, and R, for a bike ride. After we returned and took some time to relax, I decided it was time to finish off the bag of salvia. I thought about how it would be a waste of money to just let it sit there. Of my friends, only R was willing to join me in this endeavor, the others were uninterested. We headed out to the garage, where I took a seat on the stairs to prepare the salvia. Next to the stairs was an old wooden fence, with saplings and a large tree. Beyond that, I could hear children playing in the neighbor's field, their laughter ringing through the air. I packed the bowl to the brim with the 20x salvia extract, feeling a mix of excitement and trepidation. R, however, was apprehensive about trying it. He had heard stories of the intense experiences others had gone through and was reluctant to risk anything nightmarish. I brushed off his concerns, feeling overly confident. Let's see what happens, I thought to myself. I took a deep breath and leaned down to ignite the bowl, inhaling as much smoke as I could. The bong filled with a dense cloud, far more than I had ever managed to create with my small pipes. In my eagerness, I ended up taking in nearly half the bowl in one hit. Since I was determined to experience the full effects, I held the hit in for as long as possible, aiming to maximize what I would feel. After about 35 seconds, I exhaled and immediately started to notice that something felt very off. Still caught up in my impulsive decisions, I took the rest of the bowl in a huge hit and held it in again, thinking I could handle it. After finally exhaling for the second time, R asked me how I felt and whether it was working this time. I attempted to communicate how strange everything was, but all that came out were slurred words. Suddenly, my vision began to distort, as if everything around me was being rapidly flipped through a book. I managed to express to R that I needed a moment to gather myself. Sensing my state, he remained alert, watching closely for any signs that something was seriously wrong. So, like a good friend would do, he went inside to watch TV, leaving me alone as I began to spiral into confusion and madness. The last clear memory I had of the reality I was in was seeing R walk past me and head back into the house. At that moment, it felt like everything was just beginning to unravel. Everything I could see started to slow down, as if time itself was being cut into pieces. I lifted my hand in front of my face and noticed that it seemed to be moving differently than usual. Instead of smoothly traveling through the air, it felt as if my hand was being drawn across my vision, like the pages of a flip book coming to life, one frame at a time. It's a strange sensation, hard to put into words, but I understood that rather than moving continuously, I was witnessing each moment being created individually, like snapshots flipping by instead of a steady stream of experiences. As this realization washed over me, I heard a piercing, high-pitched sound that filled me with an overwhelming sense of dread. It felt as if something incredibly significant was happening right in front of me. At that moment, I completely forgot that I had smoked salvia. Everything that followed seemed real and urgent, while the fabric of my reality started to tear apart. In an attempt to escape this overwhelming experience, I closed my eyes, thinking that perhaps this was too much for me to handle. But the instant I shut my eyes, it felt like I was transported into an entirely different world. The last couple of minutes of my life replayed before me like a series of instant photographs, each one capturing a different moment in time. These images flipped quickly, demonstrating how each piece of reality was created. Suddenly, the snapshot split apart, revealing what lay behind our everyday existence, exposing the truth hiding just out of sight. At this point, I couldn't remember anything about my life at all. Once the pictures split, I felt myself being pulled into the space between them. A disembodied female voice, one I couldn't recognize, told me that this was the space between moments. We usually think of life as a smooth flow, but in truth, reality is completely broken down and recreated between every second. Each moment is like a page in that flipbook I had imagined, with the previous one being erased and replaced with a new one. I learned that this flipping was powered by an enormous wheel, which was the source of the strange noise I had heard before. It pressed against me, and I felt the weight of it pushing, as if it threatened to crush me and replace the current me with some new version from the next instant. Fear enveloped me, and I was filled with a strange sense of déjà vu, as if I had been in this very spot before, which was odd since this was my first real experience with salvia. The voice explained to me that the wheel and this space are the only things that truly exist. The reality we know is simply an effect of this wheel's action. My consciousness had been in this space for what felt like an eternity, grinding against this wheel, spinning with it, participating in the creation of reality. I had somehow escaped from it years ago, coinciding with my physical birth, but now it seemed I was pulled back into where I truly belonged. A sense of hopelessness washed over me. My entire life felt like a temporary dream, a distraction to cope with being merely a small part of this massive mechanism, both in a literal sense and in a metaphorical way. With the illusion shattered, I felt trapped once more, and all my past experiences, my friends, and my family seemed to vanish into nothingness, mere tricks I had used to keep myself occupied. This was the true existence. The feminine voice revealed that everyone around me was her child, and our sole purpose was to spin along with this wheel and help create reality. Confused, I glanced around and realized that I was surrounded. I looked around, feeling a deep confusion settle in my mind. It dawned on me that I was no longer alone. I was surrounded by trillions of other tiny beings, all like me, each of us caught in an endless cycle of spinning. This spinning was not just random, it was our way of weaving together the very fabric of reality itself. In a frantic chorus, they screamed at me, help us spin. Stay with us. Now that you are here, you cannot leave. You cannot leave. You cannot leave. You will never leave. You are us and we are you. This has always been this way, and it always will. The weight of those words hit hard. They were the children of a force greater than us all, and I, too, was one of her children. I had once escaped this fate, but here I was again, pulled back into the fold. The fear that gripped me was overwhelming. In that moment, I realized I was in hell, an existence I had always been a part of but had simply forgotten for a time. I found myself trapped in this dark place for what seemed like an eternity. Time, in this strange dimension, felt meaningless, each passing second stretched into what felt like endless years. As time drifted by, memories of my life on Earth started to fade. It was as if my life had become nothing more than a distant dream, one I could barely recall just moments after waking up. This left me feeling a profound sense of disorientation and dread. I ended up resigning myself to the grim fate of spinning for all eternity. After what could have been thousands of years, though who could measure time in eternity, a flicker of memory stirred within me. I began to remember that I had once managed to escape this hellish existence and enter the dream world, which felt like normal life on Earth. Perhaps, just maybe, I could find a way to escape once more. I didn't believe I could return to my old life, but the idea of being born again, as the woman had suggested, felt like a glimmer of hope. Starting anew in any form would surely be better than remaining trapped in this torment. With determination, I forced myself to turn my gaze toward the wheel that loomed before me, striving to remember how I had escaped previously. As I shifted, I found myself looking at the wheel from the side, which gave it a two-dimensional appearance. It was divided into countless sections, resembling a pizza or the wheel on a game show. Each section was colored differently, the edges jagged and vibrant, flickering as they spun around me at an incredible speed. In this space, where the rules of reality felt warped, it seemed natural that the wheel would spin infinitely. Each slice whipped past me so quickly that I could feel the pull against my face, a sensation both harsh and electric. This was a welcome feeling compared to the agony of being torn apart on the other side of the wheel, a torment I had endured for what felt like forever. As the slices continued their rapid rotation, I focused on them, desperate to grasp what I was witnessing. With time, my mind began to comprehend the truth behind the chaos. Each slice represented a moment in time belonging to a person in the dream world, the world of Earth. Maybe, just maybe, I could use these slices as a path to escape. Just as this thought crystallized in my mind, the female voice returned, warning me that attempting to escape would be futile. Even if I managed to break free into reality once more, my return to this hellish existence would be unavoidable, either through death or by making the reckless choice to smoke salvia again. Despite her warning, I felt a surge of determination. With a sense of urgency, I began to claw at the wheel, trying to insert myself into one of the slices, yearning to inhabit one of the lives I glimpsed within them. But the wheel was spinning too swiftly, and whenever my fingers grazed its surface, a jolt of electricity shot through me, causing me immense pain. Ignoring the agony, I fought harder, digging my fingers into the wheel, desperate for a chance to escape. To my astonishment, the wheel appeared to momentarily stutter and slow down. Hope ignited within me, and I threw myself into the effort, clawing with all my might. The electric sensation intensified, but my focus burned brighter than the pain. As I continued to pull, the wheel gradually slowed enough for me to examine each slice individually. Each press of my fingers allowed me to temporarily become the person each slice represented. I experienced life through their eyes. I was an elderly man, slumped on a couch, filled with regret as he wished for his children's presence. I transformed into a young girl, animatedly chatting with friends on the phone. I became a father, consumed by rage, yelling at his frightened children cowering in the corner of their kitchen. I stepped into the shoes of a junkie, living in the darkest depths of addiction, and so many other lives. In a dark alleyway, I found myself waiting, feeling the weight of desperation pressing down on me. I was like a shadow lurking, just a junkie hoping for a passerby, a target for my next robbery. This was my reality, a life marked by addiction and the instinctual drive to survive, no matter the cost. As I explored my mind, I envisioned life as a series of slices, each representing a different person. With my hand gliding up and down one of these slices, I felt as if I was moving through their existence. The broad part at the top of the slice symbolized the start of their journey, the point of their first breath, where endless possibilities awaited. As I moved toward the narrow tip at the center, it marked the end of that journey, their death. The left-to-right motion across the slice reflected the many choices made throughout life. In the beginning, the paths were plentiful, wide open, but as time passed, those options became fewer and narrower, just as life's choices do as we approach our final moments. I discovered something profound in this exploration. Every person whose slice I touched had, at some point, experienced smoking salvia. This substance acted as a key, unlocking their slice to me. In this altered state, I could glimpse the infinite timelines of others who had shared that experience. It was as if the fabric of their lives unfolded before my eyes. In a fleeting moment, I caught a glimpse of my own slice where I originated. I saw myself sitting on the stoop of my garage, head down, eyes closed, lost in my world. Everything looked distorted, like a reflection viewed through a warped glass. I reached toward the slice and, for a brief instant, I returned to myself. My eyes opened, and a rush of joy filled me at the familiarity of my surroundings. However, that joy was short-lived. As the wheel of existence began to rotate faster, I felt myself being pulled away, yanked back into the chaotic salvia space. I desperately grasped at the wheel, attempting to keep my hold, but it was moving too fast. I was trapped, forced to endure an endless wait until the wheel would grant me another chance to return to my slice. I considered jumping into the slice of another person, a risky escape from my current hell. However, uncertainty held me back. What if that leap succeeded but resulted in taking over someone else's life? Would I annihilate their existence in the process? In the midst of this turmoil, I struggled to remember my identity. As I drifted through the lives of countless others, I found myself losing the sense of who I really was. Each time I inhabited a new slice, I became fully absorbed in those moments, feeling their emotions and experiences. I questioned the reality that I remembered. Was the memory of sitting on that garage porch truly mine, or merely the last memory I clung to? I waited anxiously for the wheel to slow again, knowing my slice would soon come back around. As it approached, I reached out, feeling the electric rush that accompanied my grasp. With determination, I pulled myself toward it, and once the slice slowed, I hurled myself into it, wanting nothing more than to reclaim my life. But the moment I crossed the threshold, everything shattered. I felt my skin torn away, my body ripped into countless pieces, flung into an abyss of blackness. In that dark space, fragments of the slice I tried to enter surrounded me. Each piece resembled a porthole, offering glimpses into different moments of my life. They were scattered, chaotic, revealing memories and futures that felt both familiar and foreign. I saw myself in middle school, practicing the saxophone, and another instance of me arguing with my sister about something trivial. There were even memories involving people I did not recognize, possibly reflections of moments yet to come. Unsure if I was witnessing my past or future, I hesitated to touch these slices. I feared they might pull me into those moments or toss me into a different time altogether. Just when I thought I might remain lost forever, I spotted something that felt like home. There I was, sitting in the garage again, preparing to load a bowl, with a talking nearby. Yet the perspective was strange, as if I were looking up at myself from deep within the concrete floor, disorienting reminder of how far I felt from my own existence. I grabbed the sides of the window, feeling the edges dig into my palms as I pushed myself forward with all my strength. The moment my feet finally passed through, I was suddenly in my body again, or at least, in a body that felt foreign to me. I could not tell if it was my own or someone else's. Confusion enveloped me. In that moment, I realized that I had no memories to cling to. I was like a vessel, empty and lost, standing in a place that was strange and unfamiliar. Gradually, like a fog lifting, memories began to trickle back into my mind. I started to recall bits and pieces from my childhood, flashes of my family, and familiar moments that felt comforting yet distant. I remembered that I was a college student, attempting to navigate my way through life. But then, a nagging thought struck me: there had been a reason I came out here. What was that reason? My eyes scanned the ground and landed on a bong resting at my feet. Just like that, everything came flooding back to me in a rush. I smoked salvia. I exclaimed, the realization hitting me like a wave. That's what caused all of this. I turned my head, glancing behind me, and was astounded to see a tear in the very fabric of space where I had pulled myself through. The laughter of children echoed nearby, her children, I realized. Their voices rang out in joyful chants, but the sight around me was deeply unsettling. The trees, alive with an energy of their own, seemed to be working furiously, creating everything around me. It was as if they were trying to draw me back toward the rip I had just exited, reaching out with their branches like fingers attempting to pull me back into the unknown. Panic surged through me, and I quickly jumped up, sprinting to the far side of the garage to escape the grasp of the trees and the chaotic energy of the rift I had created. I turned back to face the doorway leading into the house. The scene inside remained a distorted blur, swirling and twisting in an incomprehensible manner. The high-pitched shriek of a wheel echoed in my mind from an unseen source, a sound that seemed to fuse with the very essence of that chaotic place. Gradually, the world around me began to settle. I could see the tear I had emerged from more clearly now, and I watched in disbelief as tiny hands, so many tiny hands, reached through from the other side. They were children's hands, laughing uproariously, as if they were relishing the fact that I had managed to escape their grasp. Did they know something I wasn't aware of? As I stood there, transfixed, the children started to pull the tear closed. Their laughter continued, and as they chanted, "See you soon. See you soon," the rift began to melt back together. When the last sliver of space sealed shut, the shriek of the wheel faded into silence. Yet, I distinctly heard a voice, a soothing female voice, reverberate in my mind one last time. "Don't worry," it said softly. "You'll be back soon enough, my child. Enjoy your time." To this day, I cannot shake the memory of that experience. It ranks among the most traumatic events I have ever faced. Immediately after I came down from that wild trip, I dashed into the house and locked my bedroom door behind me. Everything felt surreal, as if I had slipped into a strange dream where nothing was genuine. I had been granted a glimpse of how everything was created and stripped of its meaning. I struggled to engage with my roommates during those days. They felt like mere shadows to me, philosophical zombies, lacking the essence of real people. From my altered perspective, they appeared to be mere constructs, lifeless shells mimicking humanity. I even wondered if they were part of that strange wheel. Perhaps at that moment, I was the only true individual in existence, and everything else was simply a product of this bizarre creation. The most challenging thought that haunted me was the belief that I was not truly back in the right body. I convinced myself that my current body had been living its normal life until its former occupant made the fateful choice to smoke salvia. In that moment of absence, one of the wheel's children, my consciousness, had taken over. The only reason I had access to my memories was that they were stored within this body. If I had grabbed onto another slice of that chaotic existence, I would have been thrust into a different body, slowly piecing together their memories instead. To put it simply, I felt as though I had hijacked this body, leaving its previous owner trapped in that nightmarish space. I understand how irrational this sounds, and I recognize that now, but the feeling was so incredibly vivid that even after all this time, I find myself doubting the reality of my situation every now and then. Now, 8 years later, I have reached a point where I feel ready to share my experience. Occasionally, I still find myself reliving aspects of that encounter in dreams that resemble PTSD nightmares, where I return to that terrifying place. I wake up drenched in sweat, instinctively bolting across the room, only to realize it was just a dream, and I'm safe in my own space. In a bid to conquer my fear of the substance that led me down that rabbit hole, I bought more salvia online, plain leaf and a moderate 5x strength, nothing beyond that. I now occasionally smoke plain leaf, and even less often 5x, achieving a mild altered state of mind. But the intensity of what I experienced on 20x remains unmatched. I am slowly gathering the courage to consider going back to that place, the one filled with memories that have haunted me for so long. I need to confront what truly happened there. It's something that weighs heavily on my mind. However, I am fully aware that it will take a significant amount of time before I feel ready and at ease enough to make such a journey. The thought of returning fills me with both anxiety and curiosity, making me question my readiness more and more. Over the past few years, I have learned to accept and become comfortable in my own skin. This body, with all its strengths and flaws, has become a source of familiarity and, in many ways, safety for me. Yet, despite this newfound comfort, a nagging thought keeps creeping into my mind: what if I am unable to return to that place? What if I try to face those memories and find I cannot handle the weight of what I uncover? The uncertainty of what might come next fills me with both fear and doubt. These questions swirl around, making the idea of revisiting my past all the more daunting. The emotional journey ahead seems long and winding, with many obstacles to overcome before I can fully embrace what lies ahead.